Alright, this is going to be a very quick video because I do have to go pick up my dog from the vet and I don't want her staying there overnight. So, pardon my death on the camera. This is going to be in response to a couple of questions I got on Instagram about how tiny old me, I'm only 5'1", how I survived teaching in a public high school in New York City. This is my 9th year in the classroom. That means in September of 2019, I'll be going into my 10th year. I will have been doing this for a decade. I started teaching at 21 years old, which means I'm turning 31 in August. And it hasn't really felt like I've been trying to survive, although many people seem to think that it's just like a scene out of like 187 or Lean On Me. It's not 100% that way. There have been some times and some moments where I have felt like, whoa, I'm walking straight up into a dangerous minds classroom, but I've never felt like my safety was in danger. And a lot of my students follow me on Instagram, my current ones too, as much as I try to fight, and my students in the past, and I keep in touch with so many of them because how I really survived, or the first thing that I'll share with you in this video on how to survive teaching in any school, no matter what grade, is you have to build connections with these students, these kids, these human beings. They are human beings, and I don't know why people think they're just like little monsters that their parents have let off a leash. I mean, some of them can be pretty monstrous. I ain't gonna hold you up. But for the most part, I want to say I've had a 90%, which is still an A 90% success rate at building relationships and connections with most of my students. It's the biggest and first and easiest tip for me in this video for you is that you have to build connections with your students. Even the ones that you don't like, you have to build some type of connection to reel them in when you need them the most, especially when your administrator comes in for those observations, right? You can tell what teachers have built relationships with students whenever their principal or assistant principal comes in. And if they act right, you know that they like you and that they respect you and care about you doing well as an educator. And if they don't like you, they gonna show their ass. So that's one thing you want to know, especially if you're getting into teaching now or you're struggling. So I have been in 3 different schools in my entire 9-year career. My first school was a school that I student taught, and it was also the school that my brother went to, so I never really had major classroom management issues. And then I went to a school in East Flatbush. That school changed my life. That school was a Title I school. It had students with, most were living in poverty. Some were living in shelters. Some didn't have food to eat. It was a dynamic, life-changing 5 years in that school. And those kids are probably the best students I've ever had. And the reason for that is because, number 2, the way that I survive is I respect them. I build connections with them and I respect them because they are human beings first. They are my students third, and they are children second. I know I went out of order. That's going to give people some anxiety. But yeah, I have to remember that no matter what, that they will have bad days. They're adolescents. They will feel certain things. And I've snapped at students and said things that I regret all the time, and I apologize. When I say things that I don't mean, or when I do things that are wrong because I too am a human, I apologize. It is a learning environment where all of us are learning from each other. There are so many things that I've learned from my students this year and in years past, and they learn so many things from me. It's an even exchange of respect because that's how I build the classroom. It's an environment where they feel safe and comfortable talking to me, and they feel safe and comfortable telling me, like, look, I'm having a bad day. I'm sorry I said these things. Or look, I'm having a bad day. I don't have the homework. And 99.9% of the time, I'm like, okay, fine, because what am I going to do? Fight you? It's more so keeping them engaged and respecting them and creating connections with them that has been the most beneficial for me as an educator. So that is number 3. Number 3 is keeping these kids engaged. The curriculum in New York is not the most interesting, and I am an African-American woman, so I thrive and live and breathe diversity. I'm not just one of those people who like to say, I teach a top tolerance unit. No. I teach about the real shit that nobody wants to teach about, and I put it into novels and literature that I have to teach. So yeah, I am going to teach night. I'm going to teach night and teach them all about characterization and imagery and setting and all those things. And I'm also going to teach them about the genocide in Rwanda. And I'm going to teach them about the Al-Anfal genocide. And I'm going to teach them about the Albanian genocide, because they need to be world thinkers. And these are the things and the lessons and the units that I plan that keep them engaged, where they don't really have downtime to sit and cause a ruckus or be a problem. And I've had so many, majority of my students, especially this year, they'll look up and like, wow, the period's almost over. Oh my God, when did the time pass? Because we're so engaged. This week in class, because we're reading The Hate U Give, we did a whole week talking about privilege. We did a privilege aptitude test where they felt uncomfortable and they pushed past their discomfort. 14, 15-year-olds, I teach freshmen, pushing back past their discomfort to talk about white privilege and to talk about the alt-right and to talk about Black Lives Matter and to talk about these things, because this is what's happening in their world. And I'm not creating students who are going to be drones that walk around and can tell you that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Who cares? The fourth way that I think I've been able to survive is I make boundaries where boundaries need to be made, and I also don't make them where they don't need to be made. So I'm not these students' friends. They know that, and they know that they can't say certain things to me, or they shouldn't say certain things to me or talk to me in certain ways. But then they also know that they can come to me and ask me, yo, miss, what's good? Or, yo, miss, did you see Game of Thrones last night? Or, yo, miss, did you see what Chris Brown did on Instagram? And I will talk to them about it, because there's so many teachers that are saying like, oh, I keep a wall, a boundary. We talk about the books, we talk about curriculum, and that's it. No, I'm going to talk about the R. Kelly scandal with my students. And we're also going to talk about 18th century poetry. Like, that's just, I don't feel the need to make the students think that I'm a robot, or think that I don't have a social outside life, or think that I don't keep up with pop culture, because I do. And it's interesting. And this is a part of building relationships with them. So you build borders and barriers around areas of your life that you think are necessary to keep a professional setting in the classroom, but don't build walls where they don't need to be built. And that's a message in itself. But yeah, those are the ways that I've survived teaching high school in NYC. You really need to know yourself and know the type of teacher that you want to be, the type of person you want to be, because the type of person I want to be is also the type of teacher I want to be. So they just happen to align. So you want to make sure that you know what type of world you want to build, because that's essentially the type of classroom you want to build. And if you build that classroom, you're one step closer to building that world. And you could survive anything like that. That's the means of survival for everything. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.